Since today is just a trial day, I'm going to use a smaller sheet of paper. You'll notice it's only about the size of two of my hands. That's a half sheet of paper because I won't have very long to work on this project. What we want to do is kind of recreate a cave painting using the different kinds of tools that we have in the Paint Center. We've already opened the Drawing Center, so you're also free to use any of those as a multimedia project alongside this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my animal. Now, as we know, cave artists were kind of good at what they did, but they used general shapes for their animals. They didn't get very specific. So they just sort of used lots of ovals and circles together to represent the animals. They only had their most prominent features when they were doing it. Have you figured out what mine is yet? There we go. Yep, it is a horse running in the field. Okay, and then sometimes the animals did look different back then. They might have had spots or stripes that they don't necessarily have anymore today. And I think if you study animals, the older horses were called what? Some of them they were trying to bring back with the DNA and breeding programs from the horses that were over in Asia, the Przewalski horses, right? All right, there we go. So there is my general sketch before I get started with my painting. I also noticed that they didn't just use paints when they were doing their cave paintings. They also tended to use things that were around, like the dirt and the earth or clay. So you had natural colors. They didn't have lots of bright, vivid colors. They were using things that occurred naturally in the soil around them. So lots of browns, tans, yellow ochre type colors when they were sketching their animals out on the cave walls. Sometimes they would blend them out. And you'll notice this has a bit of a perceived texture. That's because the paper has real texture. So when I blend it, it doesn't stay smooth. It looks a little bit rough. And that's okay. I want some of that in there to give it more of that cave type feel. Remember, we're just doing quick sketches today, so I don't want you to take a whole lot of time making these look perfected and crisp. I'm going to use a little bit of my other colors over here. These are my liquid tempera paints. So I'm looking for a bit of a brown color. I don't have a brown paint, so I need to mix my primary colors together or some opposite colors, complementary colors together to get more of that brown color. And then I'm going to use this fan brush back here to just tap in some of my mountains because the horses like to live up along the prairies against the edge of the mountains. So a lot of cave paintings can actually tell us a good bit about the environment and the animals that lived there at the time. They were used to tell stories and keep records of what was going on. And we'll see that in many other cultures, like the Egyptians and the Native Americans, as we study the different cultures this year. So that's all I'm going to do for my background there. Now, I don't have to stop. If I want to do something else with those mountains, I can use any of my other tools. Feel free to experiment with the tools and paint to see what kind of textures and brush strokes you can gather from those. They all have a unique, different style that you might want to use for other paintings of certain things later in the year. Remember, this is your experimental try it day. So we're not looking for a finished, finalized project, but we are looking to see, did you use different types of tools to use in the paint, different types of paint, and how did they turn out as you were going through? Next thing I'm going to do is move over to my watercolors. I put some of these back here. You notice they're pretty vivid. If I wanted to make it more clear or faded, I would just clean out my brush and add just water to my brush. There's nothing on it but water right now. And then I would drag that water out. So I don't have to just paint smooth. The other thing you can do is you can actually tap your brush and it'll give some other additional textures in there. I'm actually going to pick up a little blue for my shadows in here. And you'll notice where the blue touches the orange, it's going to blend a little bit. That's good. I like that technique. It makes it a little bit more natural feeling. Plus I have complementary colors here, so it's going to give me some brown when I'm working through there. I'm just barely getting the edge of that brush. Might switch over to the yellow a little bit for up here. It's a pretty bright yellow, so I'm going to rinse my brush out and move it around. You'll notice it doesn't move my chalk pastels around a whole lot. I like that. Okay, kind of that technique. The other technique you can use is while this is still damp, you can just put water in your brush and you can add some drips to where the paint was. You'll notice it pushes the pigment of the watercolor paint out of the way and leaves some little different drops and circles and blotchiness in there. I really like how that looks. The other one I haven't used yet would be the Tempera paint cakes. I think I'm going to use that for the mane on my horse. Whoops, I don't want to use that brush. I'm going to switch over to one of my Tempera paint brushes, the clear handles. And for this, when you use a Tempera cake, you're going to get water on your brush and you're going to mix it gently in a circle on top of that Tempera cake. You'll notice there's little divots or circles in the middle. That's where you want to focus and concentrate, because as you do that, it's going to combine with the pigment in the cake and come up so that you can paint with it. These are much less messy than the liquid kind, but they give the exact same effect. So if you want something that's a little less messy, a lot easier cleanup when you're done at the end of class, a lot faster, which gives you a little bit more work time, then you might want to choose the Tempera paint cakes. Again, it's always up to you and what you're doing. I'll put some little hoofs down here. Oh, and I don't want to forget the eye. Now my watercolor is still wet up here, so when I add the Tempera paint cake to it, you'll notice it still likes to bleed out a little bit. That's okay, I don't mind. Now that line's a little too hard. I don't want it to be this harsh, so I'm going to add a lot of water to it and help fade it out and blend it in, just like that. Again, I want that natural kind of cave painting feel. And sometimes you can even go back in with just water on top of paint that may have already dried or is a little damp and see if you can reactivate some of that paint. And it'll almost fade out and blend in, give you that nice value from dark to light when you're trying things out. And of course, no piece of art would be complete without my name down in the corner. Yours should be too. And then it's going to go over on the drying rack. Your next job will be to clean up all of your tools.